to admit I'm still shaking my boots a little bit from that dance. Hi from Shanghai. I'm very pleased to be here in Christchurch in New Zealand today, and I even wore my black to celebrate the national color. So I'd like to share with you a couple insights that I've learned in the last 3 years working at JUCCCE. In the last 3 years, I've done a lot of interesting travel, met a lot of interesting people, and my kids have sort of seen pictures of people like President Clinton, and I had to explain at a very young age to them when they were 2 and 4, this guy used to run, the country of the US, and Li Bingbing, I pulled them on stage to meet one of the top actresses in China to give away 100,000 light bulbs, energy-efficient light bulbs, to 6 cities across China with Philips. And they were very impressed with that. And so they started asking me, and this is a picture of me bringing my 2 kids and a friend here to visit the New Zealand pavilion at the expo with Philip Gibson, the Commissioner General. So they started asking me, Mommy, what is it that you do for a living? And so I thought about saying, well, JUCCCE changes the way China creates and uses energy and international collaboration and smart grid, urbanization, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, ugh. Well, Mommy just cleans the air. Yeah. So they really now understand what it is that I do. However, I get a similar question by people outside of China that is unfortunately harder to answer, and that is, does China really want to go green? And I get this question a lot, and I understand that the unvoiced part of this question is, well, if China doesn't really follow in the footsteps of other countries to do climate change actions, and then our jobs get taken over by Chinese because of lax regulations, and then China will go on to win the clean tech race, and then we'll suffer here in a sort of economic decline. So that's sort of the unvoiced question that I see very clearly. So I'm very careful not to just say flippantly, well, yes, China is going green, and China will go green, although that's obviously the answer. And the reason is because I think this is the picture that most people see of China. Oh, and I think I'm supposed to stand here. Sorry about that, up there. Okay. And what they don't understand is that there's a lot of stuff happening in China that you don't see easily from outside the borders of China. For example, you might know that 80% of our energy mix comes from coal, and you might know that we build one new coal-fired power plant every 10 days or so, but you don't hear that we've closed this year alone 1,600 coal mines, and that during 2006 and 2009 they shut down 7%, the equivalent of 7% of power generating capacity in small inefficient coal mines. You might not have heard of GreenGen, which is in Tianjin and will be probably the world's most advanced near zero emissions coal-fired power plant in probably 5 years from here. You might not hear that they are going green because they understand that energy security, a stability of energy supply, fuels the growth of nations. And so they've put forth a lot of progressive energy policies, like increasing forest coverage in the last 5 years by 20%, decreasing energy intensity per unit GDP by 20%. You might not have heard that we just announced in the last few months that we want to reduce carbon emissions by 40 to 45% and by 2020. And these are just a sampling of the policies and the type of actions that are going on within China. I think the key thing to note that is that there is no debate in China about climate change. And so starting in 2006, when a lot of these policies started appearing, they acknowledged climate change as being man-made and that China must do its part to be part of the solution and create a greener, healthier world, starting with China first. So although you might see this picture of China, I urge you to think about how China today is not the China of yesterday. In fact, it's not even the China of 5 years ago. Think about a nation of tea drinkers, where in the last 10 years, we now have Starbucks on every corner in Shanghai and Beijing, right? This is a phenomenal change. This is the China that we see in our minds of our futures, the green China that will be. The the real question that you should be asking is, can China go green fast enough? Okay, so this is a very large country. You might know that it's the same area size of the US, but we have 1.3 billion people. And we're faced with some of the world's most challenging environmental problems. We are also the world's largest emissions generator. We are now the largest users of energy. So is there any hope of China going green fast enough? When you have 1.3 billion people, my city, Shanghai, has 20 million people already. And even though these Chinese people use on average a fourth of the energy per capita of an average American, these people are moving from villages like this to cities like this. And in fact, McKinsey's report that they wrote, Preparing for an Urban Billion, estimates that 350 million people will be moving from villages into cities over the next 20 years. And during this time, we'll be building 50,000 new skyscrapers, meaning 30 floors or above. We'll probably build another 170 new mass transit systems. Rob Watson, the father of LEED, one of our founding members, estimates that we are building 2 New York cities in new floor space a year. Okay, so just download the report if you're interested in more. So what I'd like to tell people is that there is hope. I do see hope of China being able to go green fast enough. And this is because the change is not happening linearly. Okay, and part of this is because of the mentality of China to be able to throw spaghetti on the wall, see what clean tech models will stick, and then be able to scale them across the country very quickly. I'll give you a very simple example. In July 2008, after China had experimented a couple cities with banning free plastic bags, July 2008, one day, boom, no more free plastic bags across the country. So those are simple things that China can do to go green. This type of experimental attitude started in the 1980s. After the sort of cultural and economic slate of China was wiped clean, they started to rebuild 30 years ago. And in the 1980s, they started creating these special economic zones. The ones that you might have heard of, Shenzhen, very popular, very successful, and that has now been replicated in the form of 50 science parks, different high-tech zones, industrial zones, more special economic zones, etc. So China is not afraid to fail because it puts these special zones at arm's length and says, it's okay if you fail, but the ones that do win, we will showcase and we will celebrate across the country. So I'll give you a simple example of how quickly China can move. So 3 years ago, JUCCCE, one of our key spots that we focus on is smart grid. So revolutionizing the electrical grid to be more efficient, to use less energy, and to be able to carry more wind and solar. So 3 years ago, we started approaching the government officials in China responsible for the grid, and their response to our presentation about smart grid is, what is smart grid? You know, are you talking about electric vehicles? Because if you are, that's probably 10 years out, and it's probably too early to come talk to us. Now, you probably know that electric vehicles are on the sort of forefront of clean tech industry in China today, and this was just 3 years ago. So what happened was JUCCCE in 2008 joined up with Duke Energy and many other companies and NGOs and national labs to create the JUCCCE China Smart Grid Cooperative and bring solutions to the state grid. And it's interesting because in China, there's only a handful of people that you need to reach to convince to create great change. So there's only 2 utilities in China versus, let's say, 3,000 in the US. Of those utilities, one is the Goliath versus the David, and covers 88% of the grid. And the state grid, inside that state grid, there was at that time only one organization that looked at new technologies like smart grid, the CEPRI group. And within that, there was really only a couple people that dealt with foreigners. And so by bringing in all of these experts in person, live in Beijing to talk with them, it created great change very rapidly. And that led to a roadmap in May 2009 to launch the state grid's smart grid roadmap to implement smart grid across the country by 2020, and they've put $7 billion behind this effort already. So they can move very, very quickly. The other reason why China is very effective is because of the clustering effect. So a couple interesting examples in this small town of Wenzhou, which is a very rich light manufacturing town. Part of that creates cigarette lighters, and 70% of the cigarette lighters in the world are generated from this one town. In that same city, there's a part of that, it's called Chaotou, and the button city creates almost 2/3 of all buttons in the world. Okay, so what China is able to do is bring all of these people who are thinking about a specific part of clean tech into one area, and all of those juices flowing creates sort of great experiments, a great environment for innovation. Quick piloting process is also key to China. So in the last 3 years, again, I'll talk about electric vehicles. First, they started with 13 pilot cities a couple of years ago. Then they added another 20 cities to experiment on electric vehicles. Recently, this year, they announced another 5 cities that they would create subsidies for private purchases of electric vehicles and car chargers and battery recycling centers. High-speed rail, you might have heard of the maglev in Shanghai using German technology. We've already built, 6,500 kilometers of high-speed rail. And over the next 10 years, by 2020, we'll build another 1,600 kilometers. So that's a lot of high-speed rail, hundreds of billions of RMB going into that investment. So very quick scale up. The last piloting effort that I'll share with you, although there's many in China, is recently in August, this August, they announced 8 pilot cities for low-carbon cities. This is basically allowing mayors and party secretaries to do anything they want to figure out how can you create a low-carbon city in China. So this is probably the ultimate clean tech experiment going on starting today in China, right? They're searching from all across the world for solutions to bring into these experiments. All of them have the freedom to do different combinations of solutions. But what's going to happen is one of these pilots are going to hit. One or more of these pilots are going to hit. They're going to be commercially viable. And China, with its sort of manufacturing mentality, is going to be able to deploy this at large scale within China. Now, the challenge is how can you then take these solutions, these technologies, and actually scale them around the world to create low-cost, sustainable solutions that can be deployable at large scale anywhere in the world. That's the hope for China's clean tech laboratory. The other reason why China, I think, has a really good environment for doing this is because they have a lot of low-cost capital. And this is not because there's a lot of money floating around China. That the reason really is because of prioritization. And starting in the 1980s with programs like 863 or 973, Spark and Torch, national level R&D programs, they put billions of dollars into clean tech research. And they're able to pull off these types of large-scale solar farms, wind farms, things that need a lot of money. And they're able to buy at wholesale very expensive high-tech solutions from places like Germany to create these types of solar panels. They can move very quickly because of the decision-making powers within the mayor and the party secretary's grasp. So the mayors I like to call kings of the kingdoms. They're not like mayors in the West. They can they can give you fast approvals if they're interested in a project. This is Yangzhou, where last June and July, we did a smart grid forum, a 2-day forum. And Jiang Zemin, who was a former head of China, this is his hometown. And he called the mayor and said, smart grid is a fantastic opportunity for the Yangzhou. What are we going to do about it? So the mayor then carved out 5 acres within the economic development zone, and within 9 months,